The ancient Egyptian language is around 5,000 years old and was spoken in Egypt for over 3 millennia. Are there any words that were used by the ancient Egyptians that we still use in modern English? Also, are there any English words that are derived from the language spoken in ancient Egypt? Interestingly, even the word Egypt is derived from the ancient Egyptian language. The English word comes from the ancient Greek word Aegyptos. This Greek word was taken from the word Hikupta, which itself was a corruption of the late Egyptian name for the city of Memphis. This ancient Egyptian word means the house of the soul of the god Ptah. Ptah was a creator god who was primarily worshipped at Memphis, a city which was the ancient capital of Lower Egypt. And so therefore the modern word Egypt is derived from a name of this ancient capital city. I do want to point out, however, that there was never a time in history when the ancient Egyptians referred to their own land as Egypt or Aegyptos or Hikupta or anything like that. The Egyptians generally saw their land as having two distinct parts. The dark-coloured, fertile region bordering the Nile, which was referred to as Kemet, or according to some scholars, Kumat, meaning the black land, and a reddish barren desert, which they called Deshret, meaning the red land. Funny enough, it was believed by some people that the English word desert is related to the ancient Egyptian word Deshret. However, this is generally considered to be unlikely. Our word desert comes from the Latin word desertus, which means wasteland, but it is an interesting coincidence nonetheless. A word that was around in ancient Egypt that we still use today in English with the same meaning is the Egyptian word bee, although during some periods in Egyptian history it was likely pronounced something like beige. And the ancient word bee isn't just a random insect. The bee is actually a very popular hieroglyph that was often used when referring to the pharaoh. This hieroglyph appears in the expression Nesut Biti, which is generally translated as the Lord of the Two Lands. These hieroglyphs literally mean he of the sedge and the bee. A sedge is a flower and is a reference to Upper Egypt, and the bee refers to Lower Egypt. Saying that the pharaoh was Lord of the sedge and the bee meant that the pharaoh acted as sovereign over the unified northern and southern lands, which was Egypt. So in short, this hieroglyph was pronounced bee or beige, and it meant a bee. And this shouldn't be very surprising. The ancient Egyptians loved what is referred to as Onomatopoeia, which is when a word sounds like what it describes. For example, a donkey in ancient Egypt was called an e-ah, and a cat was called a me-ah or me-ah, and a bee was called a bee. This of course doesn't mean that the English language took the word from the ancient Egyptian language. It may be that the word appeared in both languages independently, and this is likely because of the onomatopoeic property that this word has, just so we're clear. Also, just as a point of interest, this is a 4,700-year-old inscription. It is the oldest known complete sentence written in hieroglyphs, and if you look closely, you can probably recognize our friend in the right-hand corner. It's pretty cool being able to recognize words from so long ago. Here it is also used to form the phrase, the Lord of the Two Lands, a reference to the pharaoh. Speaking of pharaoh, the word pharaoh itself comes from the ancient Egyptian word per-ah, meaning literally great house. The hieroglyphs for this word is a combination of the word house along with the hieroglyph for pillar, which in some contexts means high or great. This word was originally used to describe the royal palace, but from around 1210 BC, the word started being used to describe the ruler of Egypt. Before that, the pharaoh was referred to by a word which meant king. The Hebrew Bible uses the word paro, and the Koine Greek uses a similar word. The late Latin word was pharaoh, which became the English word pharaoh, originally spelt without the H at the end. During the translation of the King James's version of the Bible, the final letter in the Hebrew word, which was the letter He, was introduced into the English word, giving us the H at the end, which is where we get our modern spelling. Now, talking about pharaohs in the Egyptian Deshret, it wasn't all barren, of course. There is another word that is derived from the ancient Egyptian language, and that's the word oasis. The English comes from the Greek word Oasis, which itself is likely related to the Coptic word wahe or owahe. Coptic is of course an early descendant of the Egyptian language, written in a variation of the Greek alphabet. In the original Egyptian, this word appears to have meant a dwelling place because it described a place where you could survive or dwell in the desert. Although it may also mean cauldron, referring to the depression in the terrain where water can gather and an oasis can form. Do you ever wonder why the abbreviation for sodium in the periodic table is Na? Well, Na here stands for the Latin word Naturium, which comes from the Greek word nitron. This is related to an ancient Egyptian word, which was a reference to what is now called Wadi an-Natrun, a desert valley in the north of Egypt where natron salt deposits can be found. Natron was a very important mineral during pharaonic times. Its drying effect was crucial in the mummification process to prevent bacterial growth and to preserve the body. Traditionally, the body was left to dry in natron for a period of 70 days. This led to dehydration and thereby didn't allow bacteria to devour the body. And speaking of the periodic table, the word chemistry is derived from the word alchemy, which itself is derived from the Arabic word alchemia. Now this Arabic word comes from the Greek term chemia, which is believed by some to come from the word kemet or kumat, meaning black land, which, as we know from earlier, was used by the Egyptians to refer to their own country. A very interesting and somewhat controversial Egyptian derivation is a name which appears in the Bible more than 800 times, and that's the name Moses. The term Mes or Messe or Mesis was somewhat common in ancient Egyptian names and is generally translated as born of. This can be seen in names like Ramesses, where we can see the symbol of the sun god Ra, along with the Egyptian hieroglyphs being pronounced M and S. These together mean born of the sun god Ra. Another example of this can be seen in the name Tothmosis. This name is a mixture of the Egyptian god Thoth, who is considered the god of writing, shown in the hieroglyphs seen here. After the bird, we again see the hieroglyphs corresponding to the M and the S sound, meaning born of, and that's how we get the name Tothmosis or Tothmosis, born of the god Thoth. And I'm sure I don't need to translate these hieroglyphs in the throne name of the pharaoh. So just like in Ramesses or Tothmosis, Moses may simply be this name, but without the name of a god included. This derivation is of course not entirely agreed upon, and it does contradict the Bible. If you want to see a detailed video on where the name Moses may come from, then let me know in the comment section below that you're interested, and I'll be sure to make a video on it. And the final word we'll be looking at today is the word ebony. Ebony is a hardwood that comes from the dicot tree. This comes from an ancient Greek word ebenos, which itself comes from an ancient Egyptian word meaning the dicot tree. Here's a piece of ebony board which is over 5,000 years old. On it we can see the name of one of the very first pharaohs of Egypt whose name we know, which was the pharaoh Den. And so there you have it. Now these words may not be the most common words, but the fact that we still use some of the same or very similar words to those used by the ancient Egyptians is pretty cool, I think. There are literally tons of words that I could have included in this video, but I know most people don't want to sit and watch a super long video. So do let me know if you want to see more of them. So I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. If you have any questions on the subject, then you can let me know in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. It would also be of great help to me if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing more stuff like this. Thanks for watching. Until my next video, bye for now.